This is something a bit more unusual. But unusual and interesting all the same. We have for many years collected strange and haunted items, to ensure they stay in safe hands. A number of you asked me why I have a puppet as my picture. Sometime earlier this year we found an intact antique Ouija board from the late 1940s and a dummy from Edgar Bergen's act. The dummy's name is Charlie McCarthy. This unlikely pair came from a Hollywood Hills estate of a retired film industry person. We do not have permission to say who, but she was well into her 90s and had been a set decorator for films and early television shows. She was well known to have dabbled in the metaphysical and well into her later years hosted regular séances and Ouija parties in her home. The board sat in her home on display for many years along with this tattered old ventriloquist's dummy. Due to the history of Charlie McCarthy, we decided to use him in our Ouija board stories. For the ones that have an interest in Charlie, there will be much more about and from him to come, as the history behind this ventriloquist's dummy is more terrifying than you could ever imagine. Now for Ouija board stories from around the web. A mistake which changed my life. Me and my friends Selena and Martha, Selena's sister Jasmine and our common friend Emma, we 5 are a gang. One day we decided to have a party at my house. At 7:30 p.m. all of us got assembled at my house. My parents had gone out for an important meeting and would return the next day. All of us had decided to have fun. Martha was the last one to come. She brought an Ouija board along with her. I asked her, "Why have you brought this with you?" To which she replied, "We must include them in our party as well." We partied hard and then at 12 a.m. we decided to play with the Ouija board. Before continuing the story, I would like to tell that some of the part will be in the form of dialogues. We placed the board on a table and lighted some candles. Selena started the session. "Selena, is anybody there who would like to communicate with us?" Board, no reply. "Selena, don't hesitate to talk." Board, no reply. We got bored after asking for 21 times and started watching TV. As the girls had to stay in my house for the night, they went to change their clothes. It was Martha's turn to change. She went to the washroom. Suddenly we heard Martha scream and we rushed to see what happened. Martha was crying and she said, "I just now saw myself walking across the washroom." We first didn't understand what she said and we thought that she was trying to scare us, but then she showed us a scratch mark on her arm which was not possible for her to make. We then thought to ask the Ouija board again. "Me, if anybody is here, please tell us. Is anybody there?" Board, yes. "Selena, who are you?" Board, D. "Jasmine, D. Who?" Board, Death. "Martha, what do you want from us?" Board, Blood. "Your flesh as well." And this was enough for us. We all left everything and ran towards the door. But the door did not open and we realized that we have been locked in my own house. Some more supernatural things started happening. The lights were flickering and things were being thrown here and there. We somehow managed to hide in one of the rooms, but to no avail. Lena was dragged violently along the ceiling. I and Martha managed to bring her down. Martha got very angry and she asked with a loud scream, "Why don't you leave us alone?" To which the Ouija replied, "Your screams make me powerful." Selena in frustration burned the Ouija board with the gas cylinder. The moment the Ouija board was burned, the front door opened with a loud noise and without wasting any time we ran out of the house. But the thing that happened after that is the most horrible part of the story. We all got out, but when Martha was about to step out, the door slammed shut. For a second everything was dead silent, but after that we banged the out in order to save Martha and we heard her screams from inside. After some time our neighbors came and we managed to break the door. We found Martha lying unconscious on the floor. We took her to the hospital. After that day Martha never spoke a word again and she has become a silent insane. Later we found that the spirit whom we called through the Ouija board was David, who was Selena's half-brother. He died due to an accident. David was never good when he was alive and dead. Martha till today is admitted in the insane asylum, and till today we don't know what had happened on that night, but whenever I look at her eyes I get shivers all around my body, as I feel something horrible had happened which changed the strong girl into an insane. We too left the house and have shifted to another house. I still feel that why did we do this mistake, because of which our lives changed. But till today I feel a bad presence around me. Now for the next. My first mistake was calling a spirit a coward. My friend had mentioned that she had one, so I asked her to pull the board out so I could check it out. At first she said no, but then agreed to do it as long as she didn't have to participate. After she had the board set up I asked, "Is there anyone in here?" Nothing. So, being a dumb teenager, I said, "If anything is in here and not talking, you're a coward." The board was put away after that. Fast forward about a week later and have me sleeping upstairs on my couch. I wake up on a stereotypical stormy night. Thunder and lightning, wind and rain. The works. I look around to see why I woke up and couldn't see a thing, and decide to try and fall back asleep. After laying there for about 30s I hear from downstairs, "Get the boy," in a very raspy, wispy voice. I open my eyes and listen, nothing. Start to go back to sleep, "Get the boy," it was much louder this time. Then my downstairs door slams shut. I freak the fuck out because nobody slept down there and we had no drafts. Another board and a doll. A creepy doll. I have a terrifying story about an Ouija board. I got a call from my cousin who said that he, his brother, his dad, and his best friend were using an Ouija in their basement. Prior to starting they took a large porcelain doll out of the room because it was creepy and placed it in an adjacent room face down on a pile of towels. My cousin took a short break because the board was just spouting nonsense and he went to take a shit. His dad and brother and friends started asking the board questions without him. One of the questions was, "Who is in the other room?" It just started spouting random numbers, and when my cousin came back into the room his brother said that it wasn't working, that they were going to put it away, and he showed him the answer to the last question he asked and he said, "Dude, that's my social security number." Then they started to talk to whatever started spewing answers out. It told my cousin he would die in the Air Force. At this point they tell the entity they are communicating with to prove itself. It then spelled out the word doll and they were like, "WTF?" They opened the door to check on the porcelain doll they had laid in the other room, and when they opened the door the doll was standing upright in front of the door staring right at them. Everyone freaked and ran out of the house. His best friend burned the Ouija board and I think he temporarily went nuts for a few months. My cousin for some reason then joined the Air Force and is on a base in Europe now. Sometimes something gets out. I have no evidence, and I do not care if you don't believe me. I've used a board with results, and let something into my home. And have been physically assaulted by this entity. It started out with that feeling like you're being watched, and doors closing, and footsteps on the hardwood when you were home alone. And progressed slowly into being kept awake by something shaking the bed, or pulling off your covers. Sometimes even whispering your name. The board would disappear for days on end, then show up in places you never would have put it. I became obsessed with it. Then it was a black mass in the corner of the room. Or the silhouette of a man watching you from the doorway. After that it escalated pretty quickly. I had my hair pulled. Fingers pricked. Scratched. Choked. Held down in bed while this thing whispered in my ear in what could have only been Latin. We had our house blessed and the bad thing hasn't shown back up. Just the normal occurrences now. But I will never again play with one of those boards. Sometimes they get into you. My wife and I had some unexplained things going on in the house we were renting. So we got a board so we could try to figure out what we were dealing with. Bad idea. The board was just a standard plain board. We used it one night to speak with, hopefully, our spirit. What we didn't realize is that Ouija boards open the door for anything to come through and speak. The looking piece flew off the board near the end of our session and we had no real answers to anything. We were speaking with something, but it was very evasive with its answers. Things got worse in the house and we eventually broke our lease and moved, radios and TVs going on by themselves, water running. After the board though things got bad. Voices, moving objects, and my wife says I got possessed one night, but I can't validate that as I was asleep. A case of lost time. My friend and I were about 14 or 15. She had a Ouija board that we used quite often. I always thought she was pushing it for the fun factor. I never took it too seriously. One night we started, and it was about 9 p.m. we started getting very strange sayings, none of them I can remember 27 years later, and we got a name. Although the name I have forgotten over the years, it said he was from Malaysia. He was here to protect us. I do remember that much. The next thing we know it's 7 a.m. It was like we blinked and the sun was up. It was very freaky. We lost 10 hours of our life. Neither of us remember anything about it. We were just sitting there at the table staring at each other like WTF happened. Too bad we didn't have a third person there to tell us. She would never use it again. I did, but I never had that happen again. The warning. The last experience I had with a Ouija board, the planchette flew across the room, smashing against the wall, of its own power. They are a doorway, and unless you know how to interrogate the spirit, you have no idea whatsoever who or what is communicating with you. You've opened a door, and called them through. I know many of you may have a party this Halloween and there is always that person that brings a Ouija board. Just say no or you may end up on someone's desk like our dear friend Charlie. Stay paranoid, my friends. Do not have permission to say who, but she was well into her 90s and had been a set decorator for films and early television shows. She was well known to have dabbled in the metaphysical and well into her later years hosted regular seances and Ouija parties in her home. The board sat in her home. My picture. Sometime earlier this year we found an intact antique Ouija board from the late 1940s and a dummy from Edgar Bergen's act. The dummy's name is Charlie McCarthy. This unlikely pair came from a Hollywood Hills estate of a retired film industry person. We had them on display for many years along with this tattered old ventriloquist's dummy. Due to the history of Charlie McCarthy, we decided to use him in our Ouija board stories. For the ones that have an interest in Charlie, there will be much more about and from him to come as the history behind this ventriloquist's dummy. This is something a bit more unusual. But unusual and interesting all the same. We have for many years collected strange and haunted items, to ensure they stay in safe hands. A number of you asked me why I have a puppet at